It was supposed to be the ultimate test of courage, a rite of passage for the bravest or perhaps the most foolish among them. 5 teenagers fueled by youthful bravado and a thirst for the unknown stood before the decaying gates of Blackwood Manor, a notorious haunted house abandoned for decades, shrouded in local legends and whispered warnings. The dare was simple, yet terrifying. Spend the night in the mansion. Sophie, as Sophie. All right everyone, let's get our stuff. Sleeping bags, flashlights, enough snacks to last a siege, and a first aid kit just in case. Carlos, as Carlos. Haha, yeah, can't forget the snacks. We're gonna need them if we get scared out of our minds. Priya, as Priya. I still think this is a terrible idea, but I'm here, so let's get this over with. Liam, as Liam. Don't worry Priya, we've got this, just stick together and we'll be fine. Emma, as Emma. And maybe we'll even catch a ghost on camera. How cool would that be? The teens, a mix of nervous laughter and forced confidence, unloaded their supplies from Jake's beat-up pickup. The iron gates groaned as if disturbed after a long sleep, their rusted hinges protesting the intrusion. A cold wind swept through the grounds, carrying the scent of damp earth and decay, sending shivers down their spines. As they ventured further into the property, the setting sun cast long, eerie shadows, twisting the familiar into something sinister. The air grew heavy, thick with an unseen presence, a silent warning that they were not alone. The mansion loomed before them, a skeletal silhouette against the dying light. Its once grand facade was now scarred and weathered, windows boarded up like empty eyes staring blankly into the twilight. The oak tree at the edge of the porch swayed slightly, even though there was no wind. Its branches, gnarled and twisted like arthritic fingers, seemed to reach towards them, beckoning them closer. Sophie, as Sophie. This place gives me the creeps, let's just get inside and get this over with. Carlos, as Carlos. Yeah, Soph, but look at that knocker, it's like something out of a horror movie. Priya, as Priya. It's probably just a trick to scare people away, let's not let it get to us. Liam, as Liam. Alright Jake, give it a knock, let's see what happens. Jake, ever the daredevil, gave the knocker a resounding thud. The sound echoed through the stillness, heavy and ominous. As if in answer, there was a rustle from inside, followed by an unsettling silence. The teenagers exchanged nervous glances. The hairs on the back of their necks stood on end. Even Ryan's usual bravado seemed to falter. They had been expecting this, anticipating it. But now, faced with the reality of the unknown, their youthful enthusiasm began to waver. Taking a deep breath, Jake reached for the doorknob. It was ice cold to the touch, sending a jolt of fear through him. It turned with a grating sound and the door creaked open as if inviting them into the darkness within. A musty, oppressive smell hit them as they crossed the threshold, the stench of decay and forgotten things. Dust motes danced in the faint rays of light filtering through cracks in the boarded-up windows. Cobwebs, thick and gray, clung to every surface, testament to years of neglect. The silence within was absolute, broken only by the sound of their own breathing and the frantic thumping of their hearts. Sophie, as Sophie. This place is like a time capsule, frozen in time. Carlos, as Carlos. Yeah, but it smells like something died in here. Ugh. Priya, as Priya. Let's stay close everyone, we don't want to get lost in here. Liam, as Liam. Look at that tapestry, it's like the eyes are following us. Emma, as Emma. And that grandfather clock, it's stuck at midnight, creepy. The entrance hall was massive with a grand staircase that spiraled upwards into the shadows. A tattered tapestry, depicting a hunting scene, hung precariously from one wall, the hunter's eyes seeming to follow their every move. A grandfather clock stood frozen in time, its hands pointing to the stroke of midnight, as if marking the witching hour. It was as though the house itself was holding its breath, watching their every move. They moved cautiously through the mansion, their voices echoing strangely in the silence. Each room they entered seemed to hold the ghosts of its past. A nursery with a rocking chair swaying gently, a dining room with the remains of a half-eaten meal still on the table, a library with books scattered on the floor, as if someone had been disturbed while reading. It was like stepping back in time, each room a snapshot of a life interrupted. The mansion was a labyrinth of hallways and rooms, each one seemingly identical to the last. As they explored further, they began to lose track of their path, their initial bravado replaced by a growing sense of unease. The shadows seemed to deepen, and the silence became oppressive, broken only by the sound of their own footsteps and the pounding of their hearts. Hours seemed to melt away as they explored the decaying mansion. The deeper they ventured, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. It was as if the very walls were closing in on them, suffocating them with their weight of sorrow and decay. Sophie, do you guys hear that? Carlos? Yeah, it's like faint noises. Could be our imaginations or maybe something more sinister. A floorboard creaking in the distance. A soft whisper that seemed to come from the shadows. The distinct feeling of being watched, of eyes following their every move. Carlos, hey, don't worry guys, it's probably just the wind, or maybe the house settling. Yeah, that's it. Carlos tried to make light of it, cracking jokes to break the tension. But even his humor seemed strained, his laughter echoing hollowly in the stillness. Emma, I don't know, Carlos, this place gives me the creeps. Emma, once the skeptic, found herself jumping at every sound, her eyes darting nervously around the darkened rooms. Liam, even I'm starting to feel it. This place, it feels like we're not alone. Liam, usually fearless, couldn't shake the feeling that they were not alone. He felt a cold spot near the foot of the stairs, an unnatural chill that seemed to cling to the air. Priya, let's just get this over with and get out of here. Ben, are you ready with the camera? Ben, determined to capture evidence, set up his camera equipment in what had once been the master bedroom. He hoped to catch something, anything, on film. But even he couldn't ignore the prickling sensation on the back of his neck, the feeling of unseen eyes watching his every move. As dusk settled over Blackwood Manor, the shadows deepened, stretching like long fingers across the dusty floor. The temperature seemed to drop, a bone-chilling cold that seeped into their bones. Sophie, it's getting really cold in here. Let's gather in the ballroom and light a fire. The teens gathered in the old ballroom, its once grand chandeliers now draped in cobwebs, reflecting the flickering light of their makeshift fire. They huddled together, seeking comfort in numbers, their earlier bravado replaced by a growing sense of unease. Carlos. So, anyone got a good ghost story? Might as well make the most of it, right? The silence was broken only by the crackling of the fire and the sound of their own breathing. They ate their dinner quickly, their appetites diminished by the oppressive atmosphere. Emma, I don't think any ghost story could top this place. It's like we're living in one. Even Carlos's attempts at humor fell flat, his jokes met with nervous laughter. Priya, I can't shake this feeling, like something's watching us. Priya, usually the quiet one, found herself clinging to Liam's arm, her eyes wide with fear. Ben, I'm going to focus on my camera. Maybe we can catch something on film tonight. Ben seemed unaffected, his attention focused on his camera equipment, hoping to capture evidence of the paranormal activity that seemed to permeate the very air they breathed. The fire cast dancing shadows on the walls, twisting familiar shapes into grotesque figures. The wind howled outside, rattling the boarded-up windows, sounding like the screams of tormented souls. Sophie, let's try to get some rest. We'll need our energy for tomorrow. As the night wore on, the teens retreated to their chosen sleeping areas, their earlier confidence replaced by a growing sense of dread. The teens had divided themselves into groups for the night. Liam and Emma claimed a dusty old four-poster bed in one of the smaller bedrooms, while Carlos and Priya opted for sleeping bags near the fireplace in the parlor. Ben, ever the dedicated investigator, set up camp in the attic, his camera equipment trained on the darkest corners. Sleep, when it finally came, was fitful and filled with unsettling dreams. Sophie, I can't sleep. Every little noise is freaking me out. The silence of the mansion was broken only by the creaking of the old house and the rustling of the wind outside. But as the hours crept towards midnight, a new sound cut through the darkness. Carlos, did you hear that? What was that? It started as a low moan, barely audible at first. It grew slowly in intensity, winding its way through the halls, echoing through the empty rooms, culminating in a blood-curdling scream that seemed to shake the very foundation of the house. Emma! Oh my God, what was that? The teens were jolted awake, their hearts pounding in their chests. Fear, raw and primal, gripped them, paralyzing them with terror. They lay there, frozen, listening as the sound reverberated through the mansion, each one convinced that something truly evil had awakened in the darkness.